The bitter wind howled across the snow-covered plains of Wyoming Territory, 1875, as Wade Daniels urged his weary mount forward through the blizzard. 3 days on the trail had left him bone-tired and half-frozen, but the small pillar of smoke rising in the distance gave him hope of finding shelter before nightfall claimed him for good. Wade pulled his scarf tighter around his face, the wool crusted with ice from his breath. His horse, a sturdy buckskin gelding named Chance, trudged forward with ears flattened against the stinging snow. They'd been returning to his homestead after delivering cattle to Cheyenne when the storm had struck, turning a 2-day journey into a desperate fight for survival. "Just a little further, boy," Wade murmured, patting Chance's neck with a gloved hand. The cold had penetrated so deeply that he could barely feel his fingers anymore. As they drew closer to what he hoped was a campfire, Wade's keen eyes caught movement, something unusual in the pure white landscape. Narrowing his gaze, he spotted a dark shape huddled against a fallen log, half buried in snow. "Whoa," he called, pulling Chance to a stop. The shape moved slightly, and Wade's heart hammered in his chest. Someone was out here, caught in this merciless storm. Wade dismounted awkwardly, his frozen legs nearly buckling beneath him. He stumbled through knee-deep snow toward the figure, noting as he drew closer that it was a woman, her body curled protectively around something held against her chest. "Madam," he called, his voice nearly lost in the howling wind. "Madam, can you hear me?" The woman's head lifted slowly, revealing a face so pale that for a moment Wade feared he'd found a corpse. But then her eyes, a startling shade of green, focused on him with desperate intensity. "Help," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please help us. Us." Wade's gaze dropped to the bundle in her arms, and his breath caught when he realized it was a baby, wrapped in layers of cloth and tucked inside the woman's coat. "Sweet mercy," he breathed, immediately kneeling beside them. "How long have you been out here?" "I don't." "I'm not sure," the woman replied, her words slurring slightly. "Our wagon, the wheel broke. My husband went for help yesterday." Wade's expression darkened. If her husband had left yesterday in this weather, the chances of his return were slim to none. The storm had been raging for nearly 2 days. "I'm Wade Daniels," he said, already shrugging out of his heavy buffalo coat. "I've got a cabin about 5 miles from here. We need to get you and the little one somewhere warm." "Amelia," she mumbled. "Amelia Vaughn, this is Sarah." Wade wrapped his coat around both mother and child, his concern growing as he noticed how little resistance Amelia offered to his assistance. Hypothermia had clearly set in, making her docile and confused. "The baby," he asked urgently. "Is she alive?" Amelia nodded weakly. "I've kept her warm." "Used my body heat." Wade felt a surge of admiration for this woman who had sacrificed her own warmth to save her child. Without another word, he gathered both of them into his arms, struggling through the snow back to where Chance waited patiently. "I'm going to put you on my horse," he explained, keeping his voice calm and firm. "I need you to hold onto the baby. Can you do that?" Amelia nodded again, clutching the bundle tighter. With considerable effort, Wade managed to lift her onto Chance's back, then mounted behind her, wrapping one arm securely around her waist while the other held the reins. "Lean against me," he instructed. "My body heat will help keep you both warm." She complied without protest, her head falling back against his shoulder as if she no longer had the strength to hold it up. Wade clicked his tongue, urging Chance forward, praying the reliable gelding could find the way home through the worsening storm. The journey seemed endless. Wade kept talking, partly to keep Amelia conscious and partly to distract himself from the fear that she might die in his arms before they reached safety. He told her about his cabin, the cattle operation he'd been building for the past 3 years, the spring that never froze even in the worst winters. "Almost there," he said finally, as the familiar outline of his homestead appeared through the swirling snow. "Just hold on a little longer." His cabin was modest but sturdy, built with his own hands from pine logs cut from the surrounding forest. A lean-to shelter stood adjacent, offering protection for Chance. Wade guided the exhausted horse directly to the cabin door, dismounting carefully while supporting Amelia and the baby. Once inside, Wade moved with practiced efficiency. He laid Amelia gently on his bed, then quickly built up the fire in the stone hearth, adding kindling and logs until flames roared upward, casting warm light throughout the single-room dwelling. "Let me see the baby," he said, returning to the bedside. With trembling hands, Amelia unwrapped the bundle enough to reveal a tiny face, eyes closed, skin pale but with a healthy flush to the cheeks. "She's all right," Wade confirmed, relief flooding through him. "You kept her warm enough." Tears filled Amelia's eyes. "Thank God," she whispered. Wade knew they weren't out of danger yet. He heated water on the cook stove, prepared hot tea sweetened with honey, and gently coaxed Amelia to drink. The baby began to fuss, a hopeful sign that the warmth was reviving her as well. "She'll need to be fed," Amelia said, her voice stronger now. Wade nodded, turning his back to give her privacy. He busied himself with preparing a simple meal: beans, bacon, and biscuits left from his breakfast that morning. The homey smell filled the cabin as Amelia nursed the baby. "How old is she?" Wade asked, still facing away. 4 months, Amelia replied. "Born last September," Wade nodded, his mind working through the implications. "And your husband, where were you headed?" A long silence followed, long enough that Wade turned slightly to ensure Amelia hadn't lost consciousness again. He found her staring into the fire, tears streaming down her face. "Thomas isn't coming back, is he?" she asked quietly. Wade couldn't bring himself to lie. "The storm's been bad for 2 days now, if he left yesterday." He let the sentence hang unfinished. Amelia closed her eyes briefly. "We were heading to California. Thomas had a brother there, said he'd help us start over." She paused, gently stroking her daughter's hair. "Everything we owned was in that wagon." Wade brought her a plate of food, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. "You're safe now," he said simply. "Both of you, that's what matters." Amelia looked up at him, really seeing him for the first time. Wade Daniels was tall and broad-shouldered, with a face weathered by sun and wind. Dark hair curled from beneath a knit cap, and his eyes were a warm brown, filled with concern and something else, a kindness that seemed out of place in this harsh wilderness. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. Wade seemed surprised by the question. "What else would I do? Leave you to die in the snow?" "Some would," she replied softly. "Not me," Wade said firmly. "Now eat. You need your strength." That night, Wade slept on a bedroll near the fire, giving his bed to Amelia and Sarah. He woke several times to add wood to the flames, each time checking that his guests were warm enough. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving a pristine white landscape glittering under a bright blue sky. Wade rose early, tended to Chance, and began preparing breakfast. The smell of coffee and frying bacon roused Amelia, who sat up looking considerably better than the previous day. "Good morning," he greeted her. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she admitted. "Warmer," Wade nodded, satisfied. "Good, we'll need to decide what to do next." The question hung in the air between them. What could she do? Without her husband, without their wagon and supplies, with a baby to care for in the middle of winter. "I could take you to town when the trail's clear," Wade offered. "Clearwater's about 20 miles east. They've got a boarding house." Amelia's face fell. "I have no money," she admitted. "Everything was in the wagon." Wade hesitated, then spoke carefully. "I don't mean to pry, but is there family somewhere who could help? Parents, siblings?" Amelia shook her head. "My parents died 3 years ago. I have no one except." Her voice trailed off as she looked down at Sarah, sleeping peacefully beside her. Wade brought her a cup of coffee, strong and black. "Well, you're welcome to stay here until you figure things out. It's not much, but it's warm and dry." Gratitude shone in Amelia's eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Daniels." "I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness." "Wade," he corrected gently. "And there's no debt between us." Over the next few days, as Amelia regained her strength, Wade ventured out to search for signs of Thomas Vaughn or their wagon. He found the broken-down wagon 5 miles south, half buried in snow, but no sign of Thomas. He salvaged what he could: some clothing for Amelia and the baby, a few personal items, a family Bible, but most of their possessions had been ruined by the elements or carried off by scavengers. When he returned with the sad news and the few recovered items, Amelia received it with quiet dignity. "I knew," she said simply. "I think I knew the moment he walked away from us." That evening, as Sarah slept in a makeshift cradle Wade had constructed from a wooden crate, Amelia shared her story. She and Thomas had married young in Missouri, dreaming of a better life out west. The journey had been difficult, with Thomas growing increasingly bitter about their hardships. "He wasn't a bad man," she said, staring into the fire. "Just weak, disappointed. When the wheel broke, something in him broke too." She looked up at Wade, her green eyes reflecting the flames. "He didn't even say goodbye to Sarah." Wade's jaw tightened. He couldn't imagine abandoning a wife and child to the mercy of the elements. "Some men aren't meant for frontier life," he said diplomatically. "And you?" Amelia asked. "What brings a man like you out here alone?" Wade smiled faintly. "I always preferred wide, open spaces to crowded cities. Came west after the war, worked cattle drives for a few years, then decided to stake my own claim." He gestured around the cabin. "It's not much yet, but it's mine. I've got 60 head of cattle, good grazing land, and plans for the future." "It's more than many have," Amelia observed. As January gave way to February, they fell into a comfortable routine. Wade tended the livestock and hunted for fresh meat, while Amelia kept the cabin, cooked their meals, and cared for Sarah. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, talking or simply enjoying the comfortable silence that had developed between them. Wade found himself increasingly drawn to Amelia. Her resilience impressed him, and her quiet strength reminded him of his own mother, who had raised 5 children alone after his father died. Amelia never complained about their circumstances, instead finding joy in small things: Sarah's first attempt at rolling over, a particularly beautiful sunset, the taste of fresh venison stew. For her part, Amelia saw in Wade a kind of steadfastness she'd never known in Thomas. Wade was a man of his word, reliable and honorable. When he said he would do something, it was as good as done. His gentleness with Sarah surprised her. His large, calloused hands could cradle the baby with such tenderness that it brought tears to her eyes. One evening in late February, as a gentle snow fell outside, Wade cleared his throat nervously. "I've been thinking," he began, "about what happens when spring comes." Amelia tensed slightly. She'd been dreading this conversation, knowing she couldn't impose on Wade's hospitality forever. "Yes," she said carefully, "I suppose I should be making plans." Wade nodded, his eyes fixed on the fire. "I could take you to Cheyenne when the trail's clear. It's a growing town, might be opportunities there for a woman with your skills." "My skills?" Amelia echoed, uncertain what he meant. Wade gestured vaguely. "You're educated, ain't you? Can read and write better than most. Could maybe teach or work in a store." Amelia considered this. She'd trained as a schoolteacher before marrying Thomas, though she'd never had the opportunity to practice her profession. "Perhaps," she said hesitantly. Wade shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Or," he began, then stopped. "Or," she prompted when he didn't continue. Wade took a deep breath, then met her eyes directly. "Or you could stay here, with me." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. "As what, Mr. Daniels?" "As my wife," he said bluntly, then hurried on before she could respond. "I know it's sudden and maybe presumptuous of me. We barely know each other, but I've grown fond of you and Sarah these past weeks. More than fond, if I'm being honest." He ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable with such direct talk about his feelings. "I'm not a rich man, but I'm not poor either. Got land, cattle, and 2 strong hands. I can provide for you both, give Sarah a name and a future." Amelia sat very still, her thoughts racing. Marriage had never entered her mind as a possibility. She'd assumed Wade's kindness stemmed from basic human decency, not any particular attachment to her or Sarah. "This isn't a decision to make lightly," she said carefully. Marriage is a lifetime commitment. Wade nodded solemnly. I understand that better than most. I'm not offering out of pity, Amelia. I'm offering because I believe we could build something good together. And if I say no, she asked, needing to know where she stood. Then I'll take you to Cheyenne as promised, help you get settled, make sure you and Sarah have what you need to start over. His expression was earnest. No hard feelings either way. Amelia looked down at her hands, twisting them in her lap. May I have some time to think about it? Of course, Wade replied immediately. Take all the time you need. For the next week, Amelia pondered Wade's proposal. She watched him more closely than before, noting the way he whistled while he worked, the gentle way he spoke to his horse, how he always made sure the cabin was warm before he went to bed. She thought about her life with Thomas, the dreams they'd shared, the reality that had fallen far short of those dreams. Thomas had been charming and full of grand ideas, but when hardship came, he'd crumbled. Wade was different, solid, dependable, the kind of man who faced challenges head-on rather than running from them. Could she love him? That was the question that kept her awake at night. She felt gratitude, certainly, and respect. There was a physical attraction too, though neither of them had acknowledged it. But love. She wasn't sure. On a clear, cold morning in early March, Amelia made her decision. Wade had gone out at dawn to check on a pregnant heifer, and when he returned, stamping snow from his boots, Amelia was waiting for him with a cup of hot coffee. "Thank you," he said, accepting the mug gratefully. He took a long drink, then noticed her watching him intently. "Everything all right?" "Yes," she said, taking a deep breath. "I've been thinking about your proposal," Wade stilled, his expression carefully neutral. "And I would be honored to be your wife," Amelia said quietly. "But I need you to understand something first." Wade nodded, waiting. "I'm not in love with you," she admitted honestly. "I respect you, I'm grateful to you, and I believe you're a good man who will treat Sarah and me well, but if love is what you're looking for..." Wade's face softened. "Love comes in many forms, Amelia. Sometimes it burns hot and fast like kindling, other times it builds slow and steady like a hardwood fire." He set down his coffee and took her hands in his. "I'm not asking for what you don't have to give. I'm asking for a chance to build something together day by day." Tears pricked at Amelia's eyes. "Then yes, Wade Daniels, I will marry you." They were married 2 weeks later by a traveling preacher who stopped at the homestead on his circuit. The ceremony was simple, witnessed only by Sarah and the preacher's young assistant. Amelia wore her best dress, salvaged from the wagon, while Wade had shaved his winter beard and donned a clean shirt and his Sunday trousers. "I, Wade, take you, Amelia, to be my lawful wedded wife," he recited solemnly, his deep voice steady and sure. "To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part." When Amelia repeated the vows, her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes remained fixed on Wade's. This was not the romance she had dreamed of as a girl, but perhaps it was something better, a partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose. "By the authority vested in me," the preacher concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Wade hesitated, then leaned forward to place a gentle, almost reverent kiss on Amelia's lips. It was their first kiss, brief but somehow promising more to come. That night, after the preacher had gone and Sarah was asleep, Wade and Amelia faced the awkwardness of their first night as husband and wife. Wade had moved his things to the lean-to the previous day, giving Amelia privacy to prepare for bed. When he entered the cabin, he found her sitting by the fire, her hair loose around her shoulders, wearing a simple white nightgown. "I can sleep out there again if you prefer," he offered, gesturing toward the door. "Give you more time to get used to the idea of us." Amelia shook her head. "No. We're married now. This is your home, our home." Wade nodded, turning away to remove his boots and shirt. Amelia watched the play of firelight on his bare back, noting the scars that spoke of a hard life, a long, jagged line across one shoulder blade, a circular puckered mark near his spine that could only be a bullet wound. War? She asked softly. Wade glanced over his shoulder. Some. Others from ranch work. Got thrown into a barbed wire fence once. He pulled on a clean undershirt, then turned to face her. I won't rush you, Amelia. Marriage is more than just sharing a bed. I know, she replied, but I also know that a proper marriage should be complete. Wade's expression softened. He crossed to her and extended his hand, helping her to her feet. We have time, he said gently. All the time in the world. Spring arrived with a rush of snowmelt and new growth. The hills turned green overnight, it seemed, and Wade's cattle grew fat on fresh grass. Amelia planted a kitchen garden behind the cabin, and Sarah learned to crawl, chasing sunbeams across the plank floor. They settled into married life with surprising ease. Wade's work kept him outdoors most days, expanding the corral, mending fences, and preparing for the calving season. Amelia transformed the cabin from a bachelor's quarters to a proper home, hanging curtains made from flour sacks, arranging wildflowers in tin cans, adding feminine touches that Wade pretended not to notice but secretly appreciated. At night, they shared the bed, their physical relationship evolving from awkward politeness to genuine affection. Wade was a considerate lover, patient and attentive, and Amelia found herself responding to him with an enthusiasm that sometimes surprised them both. One morning in late April, Wade returned from his chores to find Amelia sitting at the table, a piece of paper in front of her. She looked up as he entered, her expression troubled. What's wrong? He asked immediately. A letter came, she said, holding it up. From Thomas's brother in California. Wade went still. How did he find you, the preacher who married us? He must have mentioned meeting the widow Vaughn who had remarried, she sighed. Henry, that's Thomas's brother, wants to know what happened. He was expecting us months ago. Wade sat down across from her. What will you tell him? Amelia considered the question. The truth. That Thomas abandoned us during a snowstorm, that you found us and saved our lives, and that we're married now. Wade nodded slowly. And if he wants more information about Thomas, I'll tell him what little we know. Amelia reached across the table to take Wade's hand. But I'll also make it clear that Sarah and I are Daniels now, that this is our home. Wade squeezed her hand, relief evident in his eyes. He'd been half afraid that news from Thomas's family might awaken regrets or second thoughts. As the days lengthened and summer approached, Wade noticed a change in Amelia. She seemed more settled, more confident in her role as his wife and as Sarah's mother. The shadows that had haunted her eyes when he first found her had faded, replaced by a quiet contentment that warmed him more than any fire. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sarah asleep in Amelia's arms, Wade found himself studying his wife's profile. The golden light caught in her auburn hair, highlighting strands of copper and bronze. Her skin had tanned slightly from working in the garden, and freckles dusted her nose and cheeks. What? She asked, noticing his gaze. You're beautiful, he said simply. A blush crept up her neck. Flatterer. Just honest. He reached over to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. Are you happy, Amelia? Here with me? She turned to look at him fully, her green eyes serious. Yes, Wade, I'm happy. No regrets about marrying a rough cowboy instead of heading to California, Amelia smiled. Not a single one. She adjusted Sarah in her arms, looking down at the sleeping child. You've been more of a father to her in these few months than Thomas was in her entire life, and you've been more of a husband to me than I ever thought possible. Wade felt something tighten in his chest. I'm glad to hear it. Amelia hesitated, then added softly, I need to tell you something. Wade tensed slightly. What is it? I think. She took a deep breath, then met his eyes. I think I'm falling in love with you, not out of gratitude or necessity, but because of who you are. Wade's breath caught. They had built a good marriage, a partnership based on mutual respect and physical compatibility, but they had never spoken of love since that conversation before their wedding. You don't have to say anything, Amelia continued quickly. I just wanted you to know. Wade reached for her hand, entwining their fingers. "I've loved you since the day I found you in that snowstorm," he admitted gruffly. "You and Sarah both, I just didn't want to pressure you by saying so." Tears sparkled in Amelia's eyes. "Really? Really?" He leaned over to kiss her gently, mindful of the baby in her arms. "I told myself it was enough to have you here, to build a life together whether you loved me or not, but hearing you say those words..." He shook his head, unable to express the fullness of his heart. Amelia leaned her head against his shoulder. "We found each other in the darkest of times," she murmured, "like a light in the storm." "Speaking of storms," Wade said, his tone deliberately lighter, "I've been meaning to ask you something." "What's that?" "How would you feel about making some improvements to the cabin before winter? Maybe add another room for Sarah as she gets bigger and any other little ones that might come along." Amelia's eyes widened. "Are you saying you want more children?" Wade nodded, suddenly nervous. "Unless you don't. I know Sarah keeps you plenty busy, and adding to our family is a big decision." "No, it's not that," Amelia assured him. "I'd love more children, I just wasn't sure if you wanted them since you never mentioned it before." "I want everything with you, Amelia," Wade said simply. "A home full of children growing old together, all of it." Amelia's smile was radiant. "Then yes, we should definitely add on to the cabin, and soon." "Oh," Wade raised an eyebrow. "Any particular reason for the hurry?" Amelia's blush deepened. "Let's just say that by Christmas, Sarah might have a brother or sister." Joy and surprise flashed across Wade's face. "You mean you're..." Amelia nodded. "I'm fairly certain. It's early yet, but all the signs are there." Wade whooped so loudly that Sarah stirred in her sleep, blinking up at them in confusion. He immediately lowered his voice but couldn't contain his grin. "Sorry, little one, your pa just got some mighty good news." "Her pa," Amelia repeated softly. "I like the sound of that." Later that night, with Sarah asleep in her cradle and the cabin quiet except for the crackling of the fire, Wade held Amelia close against his chest, one hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "Did you ever imagine, that day in the snow, that we'd end up here?" Amelia asked sleepily. Wade pressed a kiss to her temple. "No, but I knew from the moment I saw you that my life would never be the same." "Mine either," Amelia murmured. "You gave us more than just your fire that day, Wade. You gave us a home, a family." "And you gave me purpose," Wade replied. "A reason to build something lasting." Outside, a gentle summer rain began to fall, pattering against the roof of the cabin that had become their sanctuary. So different from the bitter snowstorm that had brought them together, but a reminder nonetheless of how fate could turn on the smallest of moments: a broken wagon wheel, a column of smoke seen from a distance, a decision to investigate rather than ride on. "I love you, Wade Daniels," Amelia whispered, already drifting toward sleep. "And I love you, Amelia Daniels," he replied, holding her close as the rain fell and the fire burned low, secure in the knowledge that whatever storms might come, they would weather them together.